Well, good morning, councillors, CEO, Deputy Mayor and Directors. So welcome to today's council meeting for the Mackay Regional Council. The traditional custodians of the land on which we are privileged to meet, the Yuwi people, represent a human link dating back over 2,000 generations as part of one of the oldest living cultures on the planet. We pay our respects to the Indigenous elders, past and present, and to those young people emerging, and recognise their continuation in a connection with our land and our community. Because, of course, of the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic continuing, we do not have any public access to our meeting today, but we welcome our viewers online through our Facebook page live streaming and our YouTube live streaming as well. So thank you, councillors. I declare the meeting open and welcome Reverend Ellen May, who we haven't seen for a long time. Reverend Ellen, if you'd like to come up to the table and open our meeting in prayer for us, please.
Two Mays together, but not related as far as I know. Thank you, Mr Mayor, and good morning, councillors. It's good to be with you. As you lead our community through this very difficult and challenging time, and I, personally, like me, you've heard it likened to a war. Well, I lived through World War II in England. In fact, the famous White Cliffs of Dover are basically where I come from. And one thing I can tell you is that the aftermath of the war, in some ways, was tougher than the war itself. And that's just to say something that you're probably aware of. Your biggest challenges may well be ahead of you. So it is a privilege to ask God's blessing on your meeting this morning. Let me pray for you. Almighty God, thank you for these good people who have put their hands up to serve our community in this very difficult and challenging time. And I thank you for the gifts, the abilities, the skills, the experience that each of them brings to the table. And I pray that you will anoint and use them in a powerful way for the good of our community and for leading us through the challenges that are with us today and that will inevitably face us in the time ahead. And I pray that you will give them wisdom, give them courage, give them understanding and enlightenment. I pray that you will help them to make the right decisions, the wise decisions, the kind decisions, the caring decisions, and yes, the difficult decisions, the ones that will be disliked and misunderstood but still need to be made as we go through this time. Father, I thank you that we live in this wonderful part of the world and this wonderful part of the country. I praise you that we have really got off so lightly with this COVID-19 pandemic, and that those who have suffered from it are now well. And I thank you, Father, that we haven't lost anybody to COVID-19. And Lord, I believe strongly that there's nothing so bad, but you can bring good out of it. And so I pray that the day will come when we can look back on this and say, well, that was pretty horrendous, but we came out of it a stronger people, a better people, a wiser people, a more caring, more loving, more compassionate people. I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Ellen. So, councillors, there's no apologies today. There's nobody absent on council business. Their condolences.
Yes.
Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'd like to move a condolence for Emily Dale, who passed away on the 10th of May. Emily was a long-term resident of Serena and involved in many different things in our Serena community. Emily was involved in the basketball and the establishment of the basketball stadium in Serena. She'd been a basketball player herself since the early 1960s. And her and her husband, Tom, the late Tom Dale, they gathered together community support to raise some funds and to go about establishing the basketball stadium and actually getting it built in and officially opened in 1981 in Hoey Street. Emily was also a long-serving member of the Pony Club. Everybody would be contacting Emily whether they needed a horse or some gear. Emily was always there to help. She was also a respected member of the dog training fraternity and an instructor in the Mackay District Dog Obedience Club and a foundation member of the Serena Kennel and Obedience Club. Emily became a member of the Serena QCWA, the Country Women's Association, back in about 2008. And Emily there served as President and Vice President, along with committee member over a long period of time. Emily then moved on, or had been involved in the Serena Show Society for about 15 years, again always holding a position of Secretary or Assistant Secretary, committee member. I had the great pleasure of presenting Emily with her honorary life membership back in October last year. And then for the past 10 years, Emily's been a volunteer at the Serena Museum, going to the museum, helping out with the setting up of displays and generally passing on the knowledge of the history of the Serena and district community to anybody that come along to the museum. She leaves behind her son Brad and her grandson Jake, and if we could send our condolences, that would be lovely.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That's very good. Are there further condolences? No further condolences? Let's move on to confirmation of the minutes of the meeting of the 13th of May. They were circulated. Got nothing back on them. Would somebody like to move their adoption, please? Moved by Councillor Mann, seconded by Councillor Englert. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried. No business arising out of the minutes. And strangely enough, I have a Merrill minute today. It's not often used, but this is a minute I'd like to table, councillors, with your concession here for the change of the 2020 Mackay Show holiday. I've circulated this minute. And just so that everybody is aware of the process around this changing of the show holiday, as you know, the 2020 show has been cancelled due to COVID. The holiday is gazetted by our request on the 15th of November last year in the Queensland Government Gazette, was the Thursday the 18th of June. We contacted, via the EXO, we contacted the Department of Industrial Relations, which is the home of regulations and compliance, on the 1st of May to inquire about the process to change the show holiday, following many deputations by residents via the councillors sitting around the table. The department advised us 8 days later that the gazetted holiday remains unless we wanted to cancel it, and if we cancel it, we'd have to nominate another holiday, and that would have to be approved by the Minister if it was approved by the Minister. So at that stage, and also we were advised that the ECCA holiday was going to stay the same. And at that stage, we decided that the best course of option for us was not to lose the holiday, potentially, so just to remain with the status quo. It took until Thursday of last week when the Premier advised the State Parliament that she was moving the ECCA public holiday to the 14th of August from its Wednesday date in August. And she encouraged councils around Queensland then to follow that move. It wasn't until yesterday that we got the template for how we might change that, and that came from a letter from the Minister for Industrial Relations, Grace, received by mayors around Queensland yesterday, outlining the fact that the ECCA holiday was changed to the 14th of August, and a number of other regional shows may also have been cancelled due to the restrictions from COVID, and as such it's proposed that the move of the show holiday to Friday the 14th of August be opened to any local government council wishing to change their nominated show holiday. There were no other options except then leave your gazetted holiday as is. So that came out yesterday. So that's the process, and having heard that process, I now move that due to the impact of COVID-19 and in line with the suggestion of the Queensland Premier that for 2020 only, Mackay Regional Council supports the moving of the Mackay Agricultural Show holiday from Thursday the 18th of June 2020 to Friday the 14th of August 2020 to make a long weekend and to encourage tourism support, and further that a formal application be lodged with the Minister for Education and Industrial Relations to request that change. Those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thanks very much. Long process for that one. Let's move on to the consideration of committee reports and recommendations. And 11.1.1 is the Development Services Monthly Review Report for April. And councillors, we're going to get the directors to speak to their reports. So we'll ask the Director. Now, it's going to be a little bit difficult, but you'll have to turn around in some cases. We might think about moving the Directors up to the table after the restrictions are lifted a little bit. Director, welcome, and thank you for presenting your report. Over to you.
Your Worship. So in the month of April, Development Services, despite some cancellation of events and programs issued by the department, continued to provide services to the community, including by having a space on Connecting Mackay where the community could interact and share and receive information on gardening, and also through the Botanic Gardens by providing more self-guided trails, allowing for the increased number of people using the Botanic Gardens to interact with the gardens. The independent report on industrial land supply in the Mackay region is progressing well, and we're expecting a draft of the report in the next month or so. Similarly, the Mackay Region Transport Strategy project has moved to the next stage with the draft strategy under preparation, and a briefing with Council will be held in the next couple of months on that strategy. Development applications remain steady with no noticeable impacts from COVID-19 at this stage, which is good news. Hopefully that continues. And regarding COVID-19 response efforts, Council's Economic Development team has partnered with Mackay Tourism to roll out webinars and mentoring sessions to support the region's event organisers now and post-COVID-19.
Thank you very much, Director. Are there questions for the Director? Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Worship. On page 19, in regard to the Botanic Gardens and the desilting trial project, I noticed we've got an update there, but I was wondering about an update on the weeds, given it's very topical.
Yeah, good question, and certainly we get a lot of requests around the weeds at the Botanic Gardens. Director?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The weeds at the Botanic Gardens is a long-standing issue, and we're constantly battling to try and keep the weeds at bay. So our long-term plan is to continue with the desilting trial so we can desilt the lagoons and therefore have a more permanent impact on the weed issue that we have there. In the meantime, there has been fortnightly application of herbicide at the lagoons. We did have some disruption to that schedule with the adverse weather we've had over the last few months, but that's continuing. And we've also had a long-arm excavator in actually physically removing weeds from the lagoons. We've also installed bunding at the lagoons to stop the weeds from travelling to areas where there are no weeds. And that's all been done in conjunction with Botanic Garden staff and also Council's pest management team.
Thank you, Director. I notice there's been some social comment that the water's getting clearer, so it must be working. Councillor Mann?
Just one more thing. Could I ask if we could have that added to the report every month, a bit of an update on what's happening?
Director, is that possible to put that in the report?
Your Worship, yes, that's fine. We can do that.
Thank you. Further questions for the Director? Councillor Bonaventura.
Just on page 18, Your Worship, I note under natural environment projects, there's fishway inspections, and it says that they've been inspected to assess the condition and inform on maintenance and rectification work. Just want to know if we have a budget for that and how much it is, whether we have a budget for those maintenance and rectification of those works.
Good question. Director.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We have a total budget for the fishways themselves. It's around $30,000, $50,000. That falls within a total budget of about $630,000, which covers a variety of things, including water-sensitive urban design, maintenance devices, and goose pond aeration devices.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thanks very much. Further questions for the Director? Councillor Angler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm curious around the recognition of the sprinkler layer irrigation system. Was it just the design aspects of it, or does it say, is it more efficient water-wise? What was the actual impressive part about the system?
So where was that? What page?
Actual page 7.
Oh, right, okay.
It's in the executive summary, second point.
Right. Okay, Director, are you able to address that?
Yes, I am. That related to not only being more efficient in the use of water, but also more efficient in terms of application of water to the plants.
Okay, thank you. Another question, Your Worship.
Councillor Angler.
With regards to safety, I'm curious around the anaphylactic reaction. Was that as a result of the individual just not paying well enough attention, or is it something not marked properly, or is it something we did?
Director.
Unfortunately, this particular staff member has quite an unusual allergy, And it's not one that's well, so like if you look at the list of ingredients, you know, it might say may contain traces of nuts, for example. You won't get that same level of information about this particular ingredient. And unfortunately, despite the staff members' best efforts to be diligent, noting the allergy, she unfortunately did consume a food item that contained a trace of it, despite the fact that it wasn't listed as an ingredient.
Are there any further overarching safety aspects here?
No, so I think the director's answered it well. So it's just this particular individual's got quite a unique sensitivity, and it was her own food. So, so in the end, it just wasn't aware. Well controlled, well managed. The individual is quite aware of what to do when this happens. So, yeah.
Okay. Further questions?
Again, on the safety, Your Worship, multiple tick bites after working in gardens. Now, it's my understanding that depending on the tick, the venom is accumulatory, like it never leaves the system, and after a period of time, it can result in other physical reactions. Is that something that, like, that we keep? I mean, do we process that, and do we? Sorry, Your Worship. The question is, are we capable of understanding further further symptoms that may be linked to this in future if that's what we believe is happening?
So, yeah.
I'll have a go. I think I've probably got as much information as the director on this. So we monitor very, very closely every incident for every individual. So we're very clear on how many incidents an individual has. And ticks are not uncommon every week, particularly in certain times of the year, particularly at the Botanic Gardens. It's a good point. We monitor that. We make sure we check it all. It's not just remove it and everything's fine. We keep monitoring. But in terms of whether there's some long ongoing ones, I don't think we do anything extra. We just keep talking to the employee. I think from what I can recall, I don't think any one individual would have had, 10, 20 bites. It's typically they have one per year or something. You might get in a bit of a run and then so on. So I'm not sure what the total cumulative impact could be, but we don't do anything specific to my knowledge.
And last one on safety, Your Worship.
Yes.
Thank you. The felling of a tree from the EWP bucket, the chainsaw got caught, and it's great that we have that exclusion zone, but it still fell from the bucket and damaged the equipment. Now, I have no expertise in this at all, obviously. I'm just curious, do we not tether the tools to the bucket as a result? Is that another safety risk if we do that?
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, good question. So it's a very, particularly the size and complexity of some of our trees. So we've got a very, very competent, as you know, arborist team. So I think every situation is slightly different, and trying to predict what happens after you cut a limb off or something is very difficult. Yep. As you say, the key to that incident was the exclusion zone. There was no one in harm's way. There was some equipment that got some damage, but there was no one in harm's way, which is the key thing. And I'm sure the team would be looking at that particular incident and understanding whether next time there's a better way to do it, which we do every time that happens.
Thank you.
Further questions? Somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Englert, seconded by Councillor Jones. Councillor Englert.
Thank you, Worship. As the Director mentioned, there's been a really intimate collaboration between Economic Development and Mackay Tourism as a result of the COVID-19 impact, and they've come up with a series of things to do with result to by delivering webinars and mentoring sessions so that we can get the tourism industry in particular back up and running during the recovery period. It's interesting to note, and some of the newer councillors might not have seen it yet, but last term we got to see the steam weeding machine, which was very interesting because it uses no chemicals, and it's interesting that in the report it talks about the trials underway to evaluate the effectiveness of different methods, including spraying and the steaming. So that's a really good environmental outcome. The nursery was recognised, as I said, for having the best management practice sprinkler layout, irrigation system, and the Economic Response Group, chaired by Councillor Bella, has met on 2 occasions now in this term, and are working closely with Mackay Tourism, RIN, and the Chamber to participate in the response Mackay's emergency management economic response. Unfortunately, Your Worship, we still have nothing on the upcoming events until the 13th of September, but I thank the CEO, Director and staff for the report.
Thanks very much, Councillor Englert. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Bonaventura speaking for.
Your Worship. Your Worship, last month I spoke about the sharp rise in our operational works. With approvals, as you know, a sign of the health of our economy. Well, this month we have flatlined. And I mean to the point which would bring a smile to the Chief Health Officer's face. But that's not the flat line we want in operational works, because operational works is a sign of growth in our region. I think the glitch could be just a combination of the effect of COVID on applications, or just be a timing issue between one and the other. So figures over the next couple of months, I think, will tell the story. So something I will continue to follow. But look, I commend the report, Your Worship.
Thanks very much. Other speakers? Councillor Jones, speaking for.
Thank you, Your Worship. In this report, I just wanted to make mention too about the desilting trial project that we had. I'll certainly be watching with interest how the trial goes in the Botanic Gardens, as it is an iconic visitor location for our locals and our visitors alike. And like most councillors, we've had several inquiries about the condition of the lagoon, so I'll be pleased to see that we're working towards cleaning it up. Item 11.1.2, vegetation vandalism. I applaud the council staff in undertaking this.
We haven't got to that, Councillor. That's
Is it under the same thing?
This is the next motion.
Oh,
11.1.2.
sorry,
Thank you. Further speakers? No further speakers. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? It's carried. Thanks very much. 11.1.2, the vegetation vandalism at Shell Point. Really another disappointing report to read on a council agenda. The recommendation is a policy-driven recommendation. We have a policy that directs the staff in what we need to do on this. I don't know whether there's any questions surrounding this. It's a pretty well straightforward, although disappointing report. Councillor Bailey, you have a question?
Yeah, I do actually, and for most of these incidences, you can see, although in no way condone, the driver behind it. This one I find odd, and I'm wondering if the director has can give us any clarification on it. Were they attempting to make a track? It didn't appear to be for visual aesthetics, or it just seemed very odd.
Okay, we'll ask Director Nugent to give us an answer.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, we believe they were trying to create a track to the beach. As you said, there was no view created by the chopping down of those trees. We did catch it early. It was just the start of any sort of damage in this area, but we think that was the reason.
Further questions? Councillor Englert?
As we know, there's no value in the timber itself. It's large timber. It's generic, or is it special?
More than I can say. Director?
Yes, Your Worship, I'm not sure what the value of the timber was. We tend to, I think this report says we're going to leave it in place. That's what we tend to do. I mean, it has habitat value, I guess, but in terms of it having a monetary value for the use of the timber, I don't think so.
Thank you.
All right, the recommendation is quite simple, councillors. As I said, it's a policy-driven recommendation. We have a policy that deals with this. I thank the officers for this very difficult report once again to come to council. Would somebody like to move its adoption? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Bonaventura. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. As you've said, it is very disappointing that we are again dealing with the tree vandalism issue. We have a very good policy in place that the council officers adhere to and implement on behalf of council. And I think that the key to this is the call out to the community to say, please look after the environment in which you live. You're cutting down your own backyard to create, whether it be a track or a view, and it is totally unfair on the rest of the community to have to put up with that. Council is very, very strict on its enforcement of this policy. We rely upon the community to be able to come to us and come forward with information. So if anybody has any information that they can bring forward that actually helps the officers assist in the investigation of these issues, I would encourage them to do that, because that's the key to success of actually being able to get what would be the word be an outcome that we can actually prosecute somebody to be able to take that forward. So I implore the community to do that on any occasions, and when the vandalism is happening, and if you see it, please come forward, ring the after hours number if it's happening after hours, ring the council so that we can act immediately. But I put forward the report for adoption.
Thanks very much. Councillor May, speaker against. Any other speakers? Councillor Bella.
following on from the question I asked, I actually query the sanity of what went on here for the simple fact that if you're trying to create a track to cut down large trees of this type and to leave stumps like that is nonsensical, you can just as easily drive around a tree as you can a stump, and a stump is actually more dangerous than a tree if you don't see it. But the squally of that is that at some point those stumps would have to be burnt out. So this is not just about the trees being cut down. At some stage there's going to be fires there. You know the problem we have with fires, and it's most likely to be done at the time when those stumps would burn best, and that will be in our fire season. So, you know, this transgression, whatever you want to call it, is actually a precursor to something that could have been actually quite devastating, I've got to be honest.
Thanks, Councillor Bello. Got to say I agree. Other speakers? Councillor Jones, speaking for.
Thank you, Your Worship, again. So I do applaud the council staff in undertaking this consistent approach to send the message to ratepayers of Mackay who have a beachfront block that killing of trees, which can actually cause erosion, is not acceptable. Just so that they can get their view, and I know in this situation it's a little bit different because the view isn't the issue, but generally that's what people cut trees down for. I'm disappointed that people with beachfront blocks do not understand that the foreshore or park reserve is public land, and the ratepayers of Mackay have the right to enjoy that just as much as property owners who live in these locations. This vandalism classed as extremely significant is just not acceptable, and I also put the report forward for adoption.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. Are there other speakers? Councillor Englert, speaking for.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I'll keep it brief. I think one of the things that we have to take from this is that the policy, you know, the officers have a policy to go and deal with this straight away. This is brought to council so we can have a chat about it and make the community aware. I think one of the things that the community needs to be aware about is that for every tree that's cut down, we are going to replace it with 3. So 9 trees were cut down here. We're going to plant 27 more trees. And so if you, in the future, if anyone's thinking about doing this, it just makes worse your situation. If you want a view, we're going to replace it by threefold, and you can't chop down trees for a view because we're just going to build it back up again. So this is a waste of time. The only reason rules exist are because some people don't care about other people. This costs the ratepayers to investigate. It costs them for the 27 trees. Nobody wins out of this, so don't even bother. Thanks, Question.
Thanks very much, Councillor Englert. Other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. 11.2.1, the ECI report for water for the month of April, and we'll hand over to the Director. Where's the Director? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just to highlight a few things. So obviously great to see the safety stats that we've had no LTIs occur in water and sewage for the year-to-date period, so great result there. Business continuity plans around COVID, so we're starting to release some of those plans that we had in place where we had split shifts and starting at different times, so returning to normal. Budget-wise, we're currently tracking to be on budget, largely off the back of our recent water billing issue, which created a little bit around social media in relation to bills. So important to highlight, obviously, My H2O and the importance of that, which gives you the ability to monitor your water use daily. And just to highlight that what we're seeing is the usage period, and Council will remember we reported it all the time around high usage of Marion back in that September to December period. One of the driest we've seen for the last 20 years where a lot of that usage occurred. When people get their bills in May, you know, they have to go back and try and remember the water use patterns back then. So just important to push the My H2O where you have the ability to monitor daily and understand what the cost of your water is. Other than that, happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Director. It's good to see all of our weirs at this time of the year, the middle of the year, at 100% capacity or better. So questions for the Director, Councillor Bello.
Just referring to page 6 of the report, page 51 of the agenda. In Water and Wastewater Financial Fund report, septic waste revenue and fees and charges under budget, 247,000. Can I get some explanation on that?
Certainly. Director?
Yeah, through Your Worship. Yeah, septic waste is a little bit up and down depending on what we see from commercial operators. We've also had previously where, based on our pricing, we've had operators cart to Rockhampton to dispose of the material. So in some cases there is a price review that occurs in relation to that, but yeah, we've probably just seen a lower than expected amount of volume coming in. So it does vary year to year, so it's a little bit hit and miss sometimes.
Okay. Further questions? No further questions? Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Green, seconded by Councillor Jones. Councillor Green.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Look, being first-time councillors, Councillor Hassan and I both expressed surprise at the number of water leaks reported in April. 2,515 residential leaks and 422 non-residential leaks. Councillor Bonaventura assured us this was all quite normal. However, it impressed upon me the importance of signing up to the MyH2O website. MyH2O is innovative technology designed by our very own council, and it's free to register on MyH2O. So not only does it alert you to leaks, it also shows you how much water you're using each day and how much this is costing you. So I'd like to take this opportunity to strongly encourage residents to hop online and sign up, as it could help to save them an expensive water bill as well as manage our precious resource. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Green. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Jones, speaking for.
Thank you, Worship. I too wanted to talk about the water usage because in the past 6 months it has been higher than anticipated. We've all received our bills, and I can only encourage people, as is Councillor Green, to sign up for the MyH2O and get those monthly updates so they can see where their water is going in real time. While most people think that their bills will think that they've increased, it can be for a number of reasons. One can be a leak. Hooking up to MyH2O certainly will alert you within a day if you're using more than 10 litres. If you don't have MyH2O, then council will certainly send you a letter in the mail in the hope that it gets to you. But that obviously takes longer than via email or via text message. You'll probably not know until the 6 monthly bill turns up if you've not received any messages at all. So, you know, MyH2O is certainly designed there to help the ratepayers not have larger bills. Another reason for larger than normal bills at this time of the year is certainly that it's our summer bill. I know personally that my summer bill is always higher than my winter bill. I guess unforeseen rise could be that, you know, COVID's been around and maybe more people have been home. However, if there is a significant rise, I do want to urge ratepayers, if they think that it can't be explained in any way, shape or form, of course, our customer service centre is always here to help and have it checked out for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other speakers? Councillor Bonaventura.
Your Worship, I too like to follow on from what Councillor Green and Councillor Jones said, and maybe put some numbers to it. And you know, via live stream today, we have people out there listening, and so let's do some quick back of the envelope sums. And I know Councillor Green mentioned 2,500 properties. Of those, about 1,150 are residential. And so even if I round it down to 1,000 properties, they will only get notified of a leak when it gets above 10 litres. And so it could be way above that, but let's look at an average of 15 litres, 24 hours a day, 1,000 properties, 360,000 litres a day of lost water. And unfortunately, the resident is paying. And we have done all we can to advise them. So it never ceases to amaze me how we can still have, as Councillor Green said, that large number of properties there month in, month out. So, you know, it's their responsibility. Surely they can sort of look at and getting on top of that. And just in relation to, you know, Councillor Jones and MyH2O, out of the people registered on out of those 1,150 properties, 660 were on MyH2O and get notified immediately of the leak and can get a plumber straight away. The 490 not registered for H2O, MyH2O, will get sent a letter by us to them. But it could take 3 or 5 days depending on where they are, how it's processed, when they pick up their mail. So again, that's 3 to 5 days. If they were on MyH2O, they would get notified immediately, thus saving them money. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ballard.
It's going to sound like we're all on a cheer squad for my HUA. As I've said many times, I'm an unashamed supporter. One of the houses my daughter lives in had a leak last year. We looked everywhere. I pretty much said, look, my HUA can't be right. Then we looked again, and it was a tap down the backyard, almost never used. It was leaking, but 20 litres an hour. So quite considerable, but over a period of a week, we found it, we shut it down, and that was early in the billing period. So if we didn't have my H2, I would have been through the roof. Okay, so now that Councillor Green and Councillor Bonaventura have tried to trump me, I think my story beat theirs. But I'd like to draw attention to our drinking water compliance. We hear lots of complaints about water quality and things like that. I would like to highlight to people that the water we have is the water we have, and there's only so much we can do with it. The more we soften it, the more chance we get of it becoming saline. And when you realise how difficult it is for staff to produce a high quality, consistent product, you actually realise how much effort goes into it. I was very happy to see the treatment plant in Eaton. We've had one in Kalen, and we're getting one in Kamala. They will only be able to do so much with water that is inherently hard. But we get down to this graph here, page 16 of the report, page 61 of the agenda, drinking water compliance. And it's incredibly heartening for me to see that our target and our health parameter results, the Australian Drinking Water Guidelines, are up there near 100%. And my congratulations wholeheartedly to our staff. Like, to have a line like that for a period like that, no deviations, is tremendous.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bella. Are there other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried unanimously. Let's move on. 11.2.2 is the ECI report for waste. Director.
Thank you, Your Worship. So again, no LTIs, only a small team in obviously waste, but obviously we're trying to work with their contractors, and we still see a number of incidents occurring there. It's great to see our MRF operator, RE Group, obviously finding some markets for our product from our MRF. So obviously it's still tough times off the back of the China sword and what's happening in the economy of COVID. So continuing to look at opportunities for that product. We're currently reviewing the Resource Recovery Facilities Services tender, so that's the tip shop at Paget. So hopefully we'll be in a position to bring that back to Council in June to obviously get a recommendation on the way forward. There's still an issue obviously with commercial waste at Hogan's Pocket, so municipal waste is pretty consistent, but we've seen a drop obviously off the back of COVID in relation to commercial industrial waste, which has an impact on our budget. Vouchers are still, redemption rates pretty high for April, so normally when we release the new ones there is a bit of a slow take-up, but very high for the month of April in what we've seen. And green waste tonnages are up for the year-to-date from what we normally see, which is really off the back. We've had really good rain for the start of the year, so that leads to obviously additional green waste being created. Other than that, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Director. There's no doubt, councillors, that we've been through the budget deliberations to date, and the 20% decrease in commercial industrial waste since February has certainly impacted on our revenue for this year and likely to continue. So are there questions for the Director? Councillor Bonaventura.
Just one, Your Worship. Page 76, and the Director mentioned it in his words about increase in products sold. Does that include our crushed glass, or how are we going with our stockpile of crushed glass?
Yes, good question. Director?
Yes, Your Worship. So yeah, we have seen some crushed glass going out the door. So we've seen an uptake from construction industries, so developers taking it to use in some of either their road base or as backfilling material. So I'm not quite sure that the rate of return is really there, but it's a product that we're getting out the door. So it certainly has been one of the products that's been going.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor May.
Just one question, page 72 in regards to the education, and I see obviously there's no tours taking place at this time. I'm just wondering, now that school has gone back, whether council staff would consider doing some virtual tours of our waste facilities, that we contact the schools and perhaps work with them on an online basis to be able to do that promotion of our waste facilities.
Director.
Yeah, through your worship, and that's a great pick up there, councillors. We have been talking about that, creating a virtual tour so we can actually provide that as a service going forward. So obviously we'd still like to have the face-to-face because that's a great way to interact with young children, but we certainly have been working on the option of creating a virtual tour that we can still present.
Excellent. Very good. Councillor Bella.
Just one question on page 6 of the report, page 70 of the agenda, under Waste Financial Report, Waste Services, gate fees, interest received and rates income under budget considerably. Not overly interested in the interest received and the rates income under budget income, but the gate fees, has there been a significant drop in attendance
Director.
at our facilities? And to be honest, I would have thought that people might have been cleaning up a bit during the lockdown. Are we expecting then maybe a surge as it frees up?
Director.
Yeah, through your worship, that's really the commercial industrial. So municipal waste that we're seeing from the ratepayers is still pretty consistent. But it's really the commercial industrial drop-off that we're seeing coming into Paget, or in some cases they can direct haul to Hogan's Pocket. So that's the real issue in the drop in fees that we're actually seeing.
Thank you.
Further questions? Somebody like to move the report's adoption? Moved by Councillor Mann, seconded by Councillor Bonaventura. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Worship. The Director has stolen some of my thunder, so I'll just highlight a couple of other things. So, inbound and outbound tonnes processed and sent to market at the Mackay Material Recovery Facility are similar to the tonnages for the same period in 2019, so that's still hopeful. And the contractor continues to work hard to find new markets, despite the challenges associated with that. On a lighter note, there was quite a bit of Facebook activity during the month around posts like "Are your bins social distancing?" and bin outings, and they both those received really good engagement. So a couple of different messages there, but really good engagement as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mann. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Green.
We're all cheerleaders today. I'd like to take this opportunity to give a shout out to the great work done by the Mackay Recovery Facility, the council officers and the community in continuing to lead the charge in high quality recycling outcomes. To put this into context of just how well we are doing, the contamination rate in our last audit in February was 14.72%. Other local governments are between 20 to 50%. The reason that we have a low contamination rate due to other LGAs is due to council's long-term commitment to education. Our well-established and effective waste services education program has proven that residents are generally doing the right thing. And it does require ongoing efforts, so I applaud your virtual tour idea, Councillor May. These ongoing efforts, as other local governments that have not implemented education are up in the 30 to 50% contamination range, compounding their challenge to sell this product to a very volatile market. So we should all be very proud of our efforts in this space.
Hear, hear. Congratulations to our staff. Thanks, Councillor Green. Councillor Bonaventura, speaking for.
Thank you, Worship. Look, just in relation to our COVID-19 business continuity planning and the implementation that has continued, and has been no ongoing impact on our services. The waste team's ability to adapt has given us a seamless operation from wheelie bin collection to transfer station functions that are continuing without effect. I say well done, and I would like the Director to pass on my thanks to staff for their efforts. Just out of note, and I think it was the Director that raised it, our tonnes of municipal street waste has slightly increased. And I believe this is also due to COVID-19 impacts, as the community spend more time at home, resulting in more waste in the wheelie bin. And to finish off, I too was quite impressed with the voucher usage, which is staying quite up there high. In fact, for the last 6 months, the highest on record in all the years we've had. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Are there other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. 11.2.3 is the ECI report for transport and drainage. And it's good to see the RACUS inspections on our rural road networks underway for this month. Director.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just to start off with safety. So there were a number of incidents in civil operations for the month, so 16 in total. So obviously something that we're focusing on, certainly at Director level and SLPT, to try and address those issues. A lot of minor incidents and vehicle incidents. So again, we've been focusing on trying to implement process and improvements to try and address those issues. Yes, the RACA, so great to see. We're doing obviously condition assessment of our unsealed and sealed road network. So gives us a good vantage point to have a look at our asset management going forward, and good to see that initial results indicate that both our sealed and unsealed road network are in really good condition. We've taken the opportunity a little bit to work on our drainage maintenance to try and do as much work as we can in our drainage during the dry period before we get to the wet, so that's a focus for the back end of the year. And asset management remains a key focus, so starting to look at the maintenance management rollout into our parks area, and also the opportunity with the MECC being shut down to identify and do some review of the asset register in relation to this facility as well. I'm not happy to take any.
Thank you, Director. Questions for the Director? Councillor Bello.
Last year I was lucky enough to go for a bit of a ride using the computer system for roads assessment. My question is regarding that. The RACAS assessment, was it done using that system, or what proportion of it, or were we still using the more subjective sort of shepherd system that we'd used prior?
Good question. Thanks, Councillor Bello. Director?
Yeah, I'll have to take that on notice, but it's still using the shepherd system that we previously used, so it hasn't changed that I'm aware of, Councillor. But I'll just confirm that and come back to you.
Thank you. Another question?
No, I'll cover it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mann.
So, electronic page 84, street lighting electricity charges are over budget, and I just don't remember seeing that in the last few years, so I wondered if we're aware of what's contributed to that.
Yeah, okay, good question. Director?
Yeah, through your worship, so, sorry, that was the lighting issue.
Street lighting,
so,
street.
Currently, we believe we're still on target to hit it, so we are just accruing the costs in our actuals, but our year-to-date budget doesn't reflect it. So even though we show there's a variance, at the moment our forecast is we're going to come in on budget.
So it's an accrual issue? Timing? Yeah. Okay, that's a good question. Are there further questions? Councillor Hassan.
I just had a question regarding the injury. That's an extremely serious injury to the contractor. Is there an update on that person's condition? And obviously it's a contractor, not an employee, and how that could be addressed in the future?
Thank you, Councillor Hassan. Director?
Through your worship. So we've done an investigation into that into the contractor, and the injury was contributed to the fact that the operator wasn't wearing a seatbelt at the time. The person in question had a previous injury which was exacerbated by the incident, but also contributed to a new injury. So so we've continued to obviously work with our contractors that we have in place to make sure that they're following all the necessary processes and procedures that are required from our own employees to make sure that's implemented.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Bonaventura.
Your Worship, just on page 86, I noticed the Mackay City Centre footpath maintenance project to reseal pavers, and there was a major upgrade, as we all know, the city centre was completed, I think, 2015. But I'm surprised that we need to spend money on it already. So I just want to know, could I have some idea of the costs, and will this be an ongoing every 5 years, or is it just a one-off?
Okay, good question. Director, are you able to do that, or do you want to circulate something?
No, I can answer that, Your Worship. So it's actually every 2 years we need to do the pavers. So they need to put redo them to obviously so they maintain. I'll probably just have to get on notice the cost because I don't have that. But certainly it's every 2 years that we plan to do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Further questions? Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Mann moves. Councillor Jones seconds. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Your Worship. So maintenance activities for the month of April included over 200 signage, installation and maintenance activities and over 150 pothole repairs. There was over 20 kilometres of heavy formation grading completed in April, and as we've already talked about, the half-yearly road asset condition assessments done. And the unsealed so that's it. And results of the inspections to date confirm that the unsealed road network is in relatively good condition leading into the crushing season, and we all know that that's always topical as we approach that season, just to make sure that the roads are up to standard for the use they're going to have.
Thanks, Councillor Mann. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Ballard, speaking for.
The half-yearly report on the condition of our roads is an indicator of the work that has been done, the extra finance that's been directed at basically raising the base level of our roads. And we said right at the start that the better condition that they're in, the easier it is to keep them in that condition and the less we'll spend on maintenance. I stated in my question that I had the opportunity to go for a bit of a ride with the staff to use the new assessment system, the assessment tool. Earlier in the term, last term, myself and Councillor Bonaventura went for a bit of a ride using the old subjective system. It was the best we had at the time. I think the new system is outstanding. It takes subjectivity out of the equation. It's far more objective and far less open to criticism by the general public. There is a cost involved, but I think that the cost, when weighed with the quality of the data returned, I think it's a no-brainer that this is a system that needs to be undertaken, used as much as possible until a better one comes along.
Thanks, Councillor Bella. Other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. 11.2.4 is a petition, councillors, a request for traffic calming on Temples Lane at Bakers Creek. It's pretty well straightforward. Are there questions around this agenda item? No questions? Would somebody like to move then its adoption? Councillor Mann moves, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Councillor Mann.
Oh, I don't think there's
That's
any
straightforward. Okay, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you unanimously. Let's move on. The Org Services monthly report for April. Where's our director? She's hiding. Oh, she's hiding. Thank you very much, Director Kylie Lamb. Thank you.
Good morning, Your Worship and Councillors. It's with pleasure that I present the Org Services report for the month of April. Safety remains a focus for the department with no lost time injuries reported since 2017-18. It's also pleasing to report that 85% of our spend for the month was with local suppliers. The department continues to look for and implement business improvements. One of note this month was the introduction of advanced printing and imagery services across the organisation, including secure follow-you printing, contributing to a reduction in paper usage. Call centre officers continue to achieve high customer satisfaction levels with 97% recorded from completed surveys. Our aquatic services were closed during April due to COVID restrictions, which gave us an opportunity to undertake some of our winter maintenance work early, noting we have reopened a couple of facilities in May with restrictions in place, and we continue to work with our operators as the restrictions change. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Director. And look, I must concur that 85% of our monthly spend being spent locally is a very good figure. And congratulations to the procurement team and the staff who exercise our monthly spend. The more we can spend locally in these conditions, in this current pandemic, the better off our community is. And so thank you very much, Director. Questions? No questions. Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Anybody? Councillor Green, seconded by Councillor Jones. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to take this opportunity for some recognition of our information services team. I think they just improved remote accessibility options whilst continuing to deliver significant infrastructure and application improvements, including security, and all to a very high standard. So well done and thank you to our information services team. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Speaker against? Or any other speakers? Councillor Mann speaking for.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes. Look, I just wanted to mention one thing, and that was Property Services installed a World War II commemorative artwork at Mackay Memorial Pool prior to Anzac Day. That work was completed by a local lady by the name of Murray Williams and funded by Regional Arts Development Fund. and it is absolutely amazing. I was able to pick it up on her behalf from the framer and give it to Property Services, and I can't wait until the pool reopens so that we can go and have a proper look.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mann. Other speakers? Councillor Bella.
I just want to draw attention to financial position, procurement plant income down by 500,000, and then we mentioned fuel costs and how the drop in fuel costs should get us back within budget. You know, there's always comment on the rates we charge. This gives us a very small example of the cost of doing business for council. You know, people query why rates go up, and as we've said, the cost of doing business for council goes up, the cost of fuel, the cost of things such as this. This shows how, and again it swings and roundabouts, because our income was down, but the reduction in fuel costs could get us back to par. So it just shows that there are small things that are a problem in people's daily lives, but they're also, you know, fuel costs, they're also big influences in the ability and the cost of doing business for council. And I just found that particularly something that needed note. Yeah. If someone wants to see what the root cause of rises are, that's a perfect example.
Yeah, thanks. Here. Thanks very much, Councillor Bella. Other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. 11.3.2, the adoption of council policies. Councillors, we've got 4 policies that have been up for review and renewal, and those policies are outlined in your agenda. Fairly well straightforward. Are there any questions? No questions? Somebody like to move then the policy adoptions as outlined in the agenda? Councillor Jones moves, seconded by Councillor Mann. Councillor Jones? Okay, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. 11.3.3, the strategic financial report for the month of April. The CEO has been feeling left out today, so we'll hand it over to the CEO for a report.
It's so cold there, I was hoping to stand up.
It's cold right in here.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be very, very quick. As you all know, we're obliged to every month to provide our financial statements. This is the end of April. Since that in May, you've already done a March reforecast, so this is the end of April. It's been superseded now. As you recall, our estimate for the full year now is around $460,000 deficit. So yeah, it's just a moment in time and we've moved on since then. Thank you.
Are there any questions based on this report? Somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Mann moves, seconded by Councillor Jones. Councillor Mann?
I'm not going to say too much. I know that the officers have it well in hand, and it is a moving feast. But one of the things I did want to mention is the financial impacts of ongoing disruptions to business operations in response to COVID-19. So the impacts of that are yet to be quantified, and all revenue and expense streams will be closely monitored. So again, I know that the staff are right onto it, and I have every faith in what they'll bring forward to us.
Thanks, Councillor Mann. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Bonaventura?
Oh, Your Worship, just a graph on page 157 took my interest, and it's about our rate arrears. And it shows our downward trend, which is good, and it also shows we are below the benchmark for other Category 5 councils, and I think that's a credit to our staff, and as I mentioned last time with their SMS messaging to those people that are behind, to try and encourage them to keep up trying to pay their arrears. So I think congratulations to all involved. So good result.
Thanks, Councillor Bonaventura. Any other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you. 11.3.4, the fees and charges for 2020 and 2021. This is a good report, CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's the first one of few that we'll be bringing for you around the budget for 2021. As you all know, we've obviously understood the COVID-19 situation, so the majority of fees and charges have been set at zero or not unchanged from last year. You will notice there is some fees and charges that have some gone up, some gone down. They're the ones that we're obliged to make sure it's cost recovery. When they've gone down, we've done a review of the time that we've been charged, and we've decided we can do that for better, or there's other reasons, and the ones that have gone up, the same sort of thing. So there's ones in there around waste, it's the state waste levy that's been added again, we're obliged to do that. So generally speaking, it's 0% with the odd exception that's in there for whatever reason.
Okay, so that's a fairly large report, very, very important to our budget considerations. Are there questions? Councillor Mann.
Your Worship, on page 186, we've got Bridges Cafe functions fee listed. I don't know that Bridges Cafe exists anymore.
CEO.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Mann. Good pick up. It doesn't. So that's the one on Blue Water Quay, and even the incumbent who's there now wouldn't be able to use this fee because it's obviously not applicable to them. So there's either two options, Your Worship, and I'm happy to take Councillor Mann's advice. We could either leave it in knowing it's not going to be used, or we can just agree that we'll remove that from the published fees and charges as part of this, if you like.
I think we just remove it from the published fees and charges. Is that okay? Okay.
Sorry for the miss.
Further questions? Councillor Bonaventura.
Oh, Your Worship, I've got a couple. Page 235, was two changes caught my eye there that in the operational work section, and we have reduced one fee from $2,040 to $550, and another one from $545 down to $45. And I accept, the CEO says there are reasons for it, so could I just have a reason? But also the current frequency of that fee.
So sorry, Councillor, what are you talking about? Which one?
Page 235.
Yep.
It's a fair way down that page, because I've only got the subtitles
To do with signage.
Oh, signage, right.
Yeah, and just in relation to those two reductions. The reductions won't be shown there, Your Worship. They're shown in the preliminary information we received from the director. So I've just found them again in the current.
And your question was?
Well, one fee's reduced from $2,040 down to $550.
Yep.
And the other one from $545 down to $45. And just want the reason and the frequency of those fees that they get used.
CEO.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to read this to get it right for you. So the current signage application structure is inconsistent and doesn't allow for discounts for groups of signs being lodged at the same time. Example, service stations, fast food, so they put in multiple packages. So that's why it's been split up. The manual lodgement and external referral fees are also not clear. So this proposal splits the referral fee and the manual lodgement fee, from the base fee, and allows for a discount for subsequent signs. So it's allowing for groups and then split it back out to put that manual lodge fee. And then on the frequency, it varies, but we've classed it as a reasonably frequent request. Whether it's once a week or whatever, it'll be a little bit hard to tell because it comes in surges, but it's not an infrequent fee.
Right.
Well, one, Councillor
Yeah,
Bonaventura.
further question. So that was the reduction. So we've lost a bit of money there, Your Worship. So the other one on page 237 was in relation to partial release of subdivision plans. And these two fees have gone up, one by 60% and the other one by 55%. And, I assume they've been made to reflect the actual rise in costs. But my question again is, are they frequently used?
CEO.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, same answer. So this one's a little bit different. So the staff have gone back, and this is one where you've got to pass through actual cost. They've reviewed the time it's taken to assess it all, and that's why there's increases. And again, the frequency we class as a reasonably frequently one. Now again, it's not every two a day. We probably do one every couple of weeks, but we class as frequent, not infrequent.
Yes. Okay. Sounds like they balance out, Your Worship. Thank you.
Good, thanks very much, Councillor Bonaventura. Are there other questions on the fees and charges for 2021? No other questions? Would somebody like to move the adoption of the fees and charges for 2020-2021 budget? Councillor Bonaventura, seconded by Councillor Mann. Councillor Bonaventura.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, there's well over, I think, 80 to 100 pages of fees and charges, and they are something that this council must do on an annual basis. And I think staff have done a good job. Again, as the CEO said, the majority have been kept at zero where possible, which will of course be at a cost to council at some stage through the year because things go up, as Councillor Bella mentioned in an earlier motion. So I think we've struck a good balance, and I commend the motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bonaventura. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. That's the fees and charges for the next budget. The adoption of a council policy on the waiving of fees and charges for the novel coronavirus assistance policy. CEO, would you like to take us through this?
Thank you. I'm glad you said that.
Yes.
Sorry, I'll stuff that up, Your Worship. Look, the first thing I'd like to say is, part of the a very short period before the local government election. The COVID-19 crisis was hitting then, and we had a conversation really quickly with the then council, making it very clear that we thought business needed some support, not only business but other areas of the community. We've had subsequent conversations with this council since then, and I'd just like to, before I start explaining, I'd just like to thank the staff. This is not something that's typical, and it all seems easy until you have to develop a policy for it, and it hasn't been tested yet, so hopefully it comes up okay. But this is basically recognising, and I'm not going to repeat all the fees and charges that we've gone through, but we've done a lot of work on the data, trying to identify the key areas where we think COVID-19's impacted. There's some in here that we're waivering automatically, and then there's some in here that's got some sort of means test that the process we do. So we're seeking your endorsements about $1 million worth of revenue that would be wavering, but we do believe it's a great opportunity to assist those that have been heavily impacted by COVID. And as you know, probably there's more to come in our future budget discussions in the next month, but this is the first one we've put up.
Thank you very much, CEO. Are there questions? No questions to the CEO. Look, can I echo the CEO's comments and thank councillors, thank the staff for tackling a very, very difficult and unprecedented move by the council in terms of an expenditure of around $1 million to assist our community in COVID and the COVID recovery. So what we have here, as the CEO said, is the first tranche of that. So thank you to councillors for your contribution around this table to putting this together, and thank you to the officers. As the CEO said, we've not done this before, and it's untested, and we're about to send it out into the market to test it, and I'm sure it'll be well received. So I'll put the motion on. Somebody should move it. First of all, Councillor May moves it, and Councillor Jones seconds. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and I do echo your words and the CEO's words that we really would like to thank the staff. They have done an enormous amount of work to be able to pull this policy together in a very short period of time, really, to react to what's happening in our community. And we have tried as a council to highlight those particular areas that have been hit the hardest. So hopefully this policy goes away to assisting them get back on their feet, reduce the cost of what they need to pay to council in fees and charges. I think for myself personally, I've been in council for 16 years, and I don't think we've ever had a policy where we're waiving fees and charges. The community will know we have a very limited ability to raise revenue, either through rates, grants, fees and charges, or we receive interest on money that we have invested. And that is the total sum of our revenue. So for a council to be responding to our community in this way of reducing $1 million out of our revenue to enable us to assist those businesses, and this is part one of our package. There'll be more to come in the budget, but I think it's a great thing that this council's done, and it's great that all of the councillors, the Mayor and the CEO, have been able to work together to bring this policy to today's meeting.
Thank you very much, Councillor May. There's a speaker against. Any other speakers? Councillor Jones, you're speaking for.
Thank you, Your Worship. I concur with what Councillor May has just said, and I thank the CEO and staff also for the work that they've been tasked with to put this policy together. We wanted to put some assistance out there for our community. Our principles that we've put in this policy is to totally waive the fees for businesses and community organisations in our region who have been significantly impacted. So while recognising the recovery of fees along with rates and grants that we receive that make up our council's revenue, to be able to do our roads and drainage and libraries and parks and playground equipment projects, this policy will have an impact on council, but we've allocated the funds in the budget moving forward, and this policy in motion today will give some relief to our businesses and our community organisations to the tune of $170,000 for food licences, $180,000 for other licences, $225,000 for backflow, $465,000 for trade waste, totalling over $1 million in the next financial year of waived fees and charges. So I encourage businesses and community organisations to check out our new policy and see how they can apply to this policy.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. Councillor Bell, speaking for.
We've spoken earlier about some of the comments regarding water bills and things like that. And the term greed was used. I want to assure the public that there's no big VAT or you know, some sort of container of money that we stock away, you know, and hoard. This shows just how close our budget is. You know, to be able to give $1 million in concessions has put us $500,000 in the hole. Now, I acknowledge the work of staff to do it. Administering this is going to be difficult. I also say to people out there that some of the things that you may have wanted might take a little longer. I don't think any of the absolute necessities come in under that, but maybe some of the wants are going to take a little longer than the needs do. One thing I'd like to acknowledge, because we are a new council, is the work that we went through, or the staff went through, headed by our CEO, in the last 4 years, where I think we cut out, what was it, close to $15 million out of the business. Now that was the fat that was cut away. We're running lean and mean. So it means if there's any further cuts, we're cutting to the bone, as this policy shows. So I just want to highlight to everyone that there's been a remarkable amount of work done, not just in this, but in the preceding years leading up to this, that have put us in a situation where our roads are better, other things are better, and we're able to deliver this as well. And we need to keep that in mind. This is not just going to end at the end of 6 months, 12 months. As our Minister stated, the recovery after the Second World War was probably harder than the war itself in London. It may well be like this. So maybe some of our visions for the future and that should be tempered with the fact that the foundation bricks of basic services need to be laid before we can build these beautiful walls. And I do, once again, commend this. I think it's a wonderful thing. I'd like to congratulate everyone involved.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barrow. Any other speakers? I'll put the motion then. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. So let's move on then. There's no receipt of petitions. There's no tenders. Consideration of notified motions. We have one notified motion brought to us today by Councillor Jones. You wishing to move that, Councillor Jones? Is there a seconder? Councillor.
Just foreshadowing, Your Worship, that I would like to move a procedural motion.
Okay. Well, let's get a seconder before we seconded by Councillor Bonaventura. So the motion is now Council's motion. So what's your procedural motion, Councillor May?
Your Worship, I'd like for this motion to be laid on the table so that further information can be gathered. That I request that we have a look at the expenses policies from Cairns, Townsville and Rockhampton Regional Councils to be able to bring that back to the next meeting, just so that we have a broad understanding of what other councils do in regards to expenses. So
a procedural motion to lay it on the table till the next meeting of council, and to endorse Cairns, Townsville, Mackay, Cairns, Townsville, Rockhampton Council's expenditure policies as a support to this motion. So that's the procedural motion to lay it on the table to the next council meeting. Those in favour? Those against? The motion's carried. All right.
We should just get Councillor Seymour, Councillor Jones, Councillor Bonaventura and Councillor Bell
So it'll come forward next meeting, Councillor Jones, with the support of those other documents. Thank you. All right, so public participation. There is none. Late business. Councillors, tonight SBS will be airing a program that highlights, in a program called An Australian Hero, highlights Keith Payne. So you may remember that there was a television crew led by Ray Martin who came to Mackay when we honoured Keith Payne's 50th commemoration of the action that led him to be awarded the Victoria Cross. We honoured Keith last year here in the MECC. Ray Martin was here for that. Ray Martin crisscrossed Australia following Keith's moves right throughout Australia, and certainly for the last 40-odd years, Keith Payne VC has been not only resident in Mackay, but he has been a staunch advocate for returned servicemen and women for the Australian Defence Force. He has been a staunch advocate for PTSD and the welfare of any returned servicemen and women. And so it's a great honour to have Keith in our community. It's a tremendous honour to have an Australian hero story about a member of our community, Keith Payne VC, being aired tonight. And so I'll just bring it to your attention that it's on at 8:30 on SBS. The other areas of late business. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I really just wanted to bring to the Council's attention and the community's attention around the Care Army, and this has come from our Human and Social Response Group. There has been a couple of incidents in our community where people have been confronting residents, knocking on their door, saying they're from the Care Army. There has been a pamphlet sent out with a contact number on it saying they're from the Care Army. I just want to make it very clear that nobody, whether you volunteer with the Care Army, gets that ability to say that they're from the Care Army. The procedure is the volunteers put up their hand, they register with Volunteering Queensland. Organisations that want volunteers register with Volunteering Queensland, and then those volunteers are organised with that particular organisation, and they then go to the community as a representative of that organisation. So there should be nobody knocking on your door or putting pamphlets in your letterbox that says they are from the Care Army. They will always be representing an organisation that's asked for volunteers. So I just want to make it very clear to the councillors, and if you're talking to community, you can just make sure that they fully understand that, so that we don't have any incidents happening that you know, may be untoward and not above board. So that's the procedure. We've spoken with Volunteering Queensland. That's the procedure that is in place for that registration of volunteers and the use of those volunteers.
Thanks, Councillor May. Any other late business? Councillor Bella.
Two things I wish to speak about. The first was that I attended the first of the Audit and Risk Committee meetings, and as forewarned, it was probably as dry as a lime bag in the Simpson Desert, but I was very pleased to go.
Councillor Bella, it's not that bad.
No, it is. But I think, like, to be honest, we laugh about Yarko and his slides. I think we can talk about Joe and his governance in a similar sense. But it was very heartening to see that the external members of that committee, many times when they talked about possibility of fraud, of this, of that, would then qualify it by saying, we're not talking about a council with these sort of procedures in place, we're talking about. Very, very heartening indeed, I've got to say. And as I get my feet further under the table and get an idea of what's going on, I can't see myself being anything other than impressed. It was an eye-opener first time. The other thing is something I harp on a little bit about, the current COVID-19 virus. I'd like to congratulate the Mayor on what we've done as far as these crew change-outs. It was quite an alarming thing for me. And I've got to say, to a certain extent, recent events have kind of proven me correct in that, one, I was worried not only about crew coming in, but crew coming out. And there's been two events. One, we don't know everything, but indications show a lady in Cairns that 6 to 10 weeks ago left Ruby Princess and has been found positive. So our 2-week quarantine is starting to look a bit slim. And the idea of self-isolation for these characters is looking very slim. But also the fact that guys on boats coming home, coming to here and then going home, you've got the social pressure of you don't want to put your hand up as feeling a bit crook, because all these guys with you want to get home, guys and girls. Now, we see with the Live X boat that turned up in Perth, where 6 of the 48, now they've been at sea for a number of weeks. I think the transit time's nearly 3 weeks from where they came from. And 6 have come up positive. I understand people on both sides of the equation, you know, needing to get things going, having or advocating caution. What I do say is that while extending the lockdown is going to be painful, confidence will be totally destroyed if we loosen up and then we have to lock down again. So while we're loosening up, and I'm all in favour of it, we need to be absolutely completely careful about what we do. We need to be aware of, to be honest, breaches in the wall such as this that could bring everything crashing down. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention, make people aware. And once again, for all its failings, I think we should be encouraging people to sign up for that app. It is going to help. Yes, it has failings. They're working on those. But at the moment, it's the best we've got.
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Bella. Further items of late business? No further items of late business? So, councillors, we have 5 confidential reports to consider. They're standard reports to council that come. Does anybody require us to go into a confidential nature at council to consider these reports? Nobody? Okay. So let's then move on to adopting the reports. The draft 17.1, the draft minutes of the Invest Mackay events and contraction.
Well, it is.
It probably has.
It has certainly contracted. But the conference attraction program, 17.1, would somebody move? Councillor May moves. Councillor English seconds. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. 17.2, the approved concessions under the Facilitating Development in the Mackay Region policy for April. Moved by Councillor Englert, seconded by Councillor Mann. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. 17.3, the approved sponsorship under the Invest Mackay Events and Conference Attraction Program for April. We've just done that one. Oh, that was the minutes. Okay. 17.3. So moved by Councillor May, seconded by Councillor Green. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. 17.4, the Legal Services Report for April. Moved by Councillor Mann, seconded by Councillor Bonaventura. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. And 17.5, the confidential commercial fees and charges for 2020 and 2021. That's the confidential commercial fees and charges. You all read that. Moved by Councillor Jones, seconded by Councillor Bonaventura. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, councillors. Thank you, CEO. Thank you, directors. Declare the meeting closed.